The call came from New York at 6:15 on a Tuesday morning. The ranch manager picked up on the second ring because when the man who owns the land calls, you don't let it go to 3. "Write it off," the voice said. "I'm not spending $12,000 on a bull that might die anyway. We'll replace him in the spring." The man on the phone was Graham Hale, 51. He'd made his money in private equity, the business of buying companies, restructuring them, and selling them for more than he paid. He'd bought the ranch 3 years ago. 11,000 acres of sage and grass in the Wind River Valley of western Wyoming. Because men who make enough money in New York eventually buy something in Wyoming, and the something is always a ranch. Graham had been to the property 4 times. Once to close the purchase, once to bring investors for an elk hunt, twice to show his children what the West looked like from the window of a truck that cost more than the foreman's annual salary. He didn't know the cattle, didn't know the land, didn't know the names of the 3 men who ran the operation while he managed capital from a glass office 62 floors above Madison Avenue. He knew the P&L, he knew the asset value, and he knew that $12,000 in veterinary bills on a bull with uncertain prognosis was a line item that didn't survive cost-benefit analysis. Write it off. The ranch manager was a man named Kyle Denton, 40, business degree. Graham had hired him from a ranch management company in Denver because Kyle spoke the language of balance sheets and Graham didn't trust people who spoke the language of dirt. Kyle hung up the phone, walked to the barn, found the foreman. The foreman was Harlan Briggs, 59 years old. He'd been working this ground since he was 23. 36 years, through 3 owners, 2 droughts, 1 flood, and the arrival of Graham Hale, which Harlan privately ranked somewhere between the droughts and the flood in terms of damage. Harlan was standing outside the sick pen, looking at the bull. The bull's name was Sovereign. A 5-year-old registered Angus. Graham had paid $110,000 for him at a production sale in Montana 2 years ago because the bull's genetics were exceptional and Graham liked owning exceptional things, whether he understood them or not. Sovereign was lying on his side in the pen. His breathing was shallow and fast, 40 breaths per minute where normal was 20 to 30. His abdomen was rigid on the left side. His eyes were dull. The flat, unfocused stare of an animal whose body is fighting something internal and losing. Dr. Vivian Torres, the large animal vet from Lander, had examined him the previous afternoon. Her diagnosis was hardware disease, traumatic reticuloperitonitis. Somewhere in the pasture, Sovereign had swallowed a piece of wire, probably baling wire. The thin metal that holds hay bales together and ends up in feed bunks and hay rings and anywhere that cattle eat. The wire had settled in his reticulum, the second stomach chamber, and was migrating through the wall toward the pericardium, the sac that surrounds the heart. If the wire reaches the heart, the bull dies. Infection, cardiac tamponade. The timeline is days to weeks depending on the angle and speed of migration. Treatment options: a rumen magnet to stop further migration, broad-spectrum antibiotics to fight the infection, and monitoring. If the wire had already penetrated the pericardium, surgery was possible but expensive and the success rate was roughly 50%. Vivian's estimate for the full treatment protocol, $8,000 to $12,000, including surgery if needed. That was the number Kyle had relayed to Graham at 6:15 in the morning, and Graham had said 3 words that determined the bull's value in the language of private equity. Write it off. Kyle delivered the message to Harlan at the sick pen. Graham says let him go. We'll replace in the spring. Harlan looked at Kyle, then at Sovereign, then at Kyle again. Let him go, meaning what exactly? Meaning we don't treat him. If he recovers on his own, fine. If he doesn't, we dispose of him. Harlan's jaw worked. The grinding of a man who has spent 36 years caring for animals on this ground and is now being told by a man in New York who's visited 4 times to let a 5-year-old bull die because the treatment costs more than the spreadsheet allows. That bull is worth $110,000. Was worth. His current value as a sick animal with uncertain prognosis is salvage, maybe $800. Graham did the math, Harlan. Graham did the math from a desk in New York. I'm doing the math from a sick pen in Wyoming. The math looks different from here. Kyle's voice didn't change. Kyle's voice never changed. That was the problem with Kyle Denton. He delivered every message with the same flat tone, whether it was about breeding schedules or death sentences. Graham's decision is final, Harlan. We're not treating the bull. Kyle walked back to the office. Harlan stood at the pen. Sovereign was breathing 42 times a minute now. His eyes were half closed. The infection was spreading, and every hour that passed without antibiotics was an hour that the wire moved closer to the heart. Harlan went home that evening and told his son. Colton Briggs was 22. He'd grown up on this ranch the way ranch kids grow up, doing chores before school, writing before he could read, understanding the weight of a sick animal's breathing before he understood the weight of his own problems. He'd graduated from Sheridan College with an associate degree in ranch management and had been working as a hand on the property since he was 18. He earned $19 an hour, less than Kyle Denton's daily coffee budget. Colton had been the one feeding Sovereign for 2 years, twice a day. Hay and grain through the gate, clean water, mineral. The invisible labor that nobody above foreman level acknowledges because it's the kind of work that only matters when it doesn't get done. He knew Sovereign, not the way Graham knew him, as a line item with a purchase price. The way a person knows an animal he's fed every day for 730 days. The rhythm of his eating, the sound of his breathing when he's well. The way he stands when the weather changes. The small daily observations that accumulate into knowledge that doesn't have a name on any degree but is as real as anything taught in a classroom. They're going to let him die? Colton said. Harlan sat at the kitchen table. The table in the foreman's house that came with the job and could be taken away with the job if the man in New York decided the foreman was a line item that didn't survive cost-benefit analysis. Graham says the treatment isn't worth the cost. Colton was quiet. The quiet of a young man calculating the distance between what's right and what's authorized. What would it take? To treat him ourselves. Harlan looked at his son. The look that fathers give sons when the son is about to do something that the father wants to do but can't, because the father has a job to lose and the son has less to lose and more willingness to lose it. A rumen magnet. Antibiotics. Time. How much? The magnet costs about $8. The antibiotics. If we use the oxytetracycline we've got in the barn pharmacy, maybe $40 for a full course. The rest is nursing care. Keeping him hydrated, keeping him eating, watching for signs that the wire has moved. Colton did math that was different from Graham's math. $8, $40, and time. Time was the one thing Colton had that Graham didn't. Not because Colton was idle, because Colton was willing to spend his hours on an animal that the man who owned it had decided wasn't worth his dollars. I'll do it, Colton said. Harlan was quiet for a long time. If Kyle finds out, Kyle leaves at 5. I'll start treatment at 5:30. Nobody needs to know. Harlan looked at his son. 22 years old, $19 an hour, about to treat a $110,000 bull with $48 in supplies, and the knowledge he'd absorbed from watching his father care for cattle since before he could walk. Your mother would kill me if she knew I was letting you do this. Mom would kill you if she knew you weren't. Harlan almost smiled. The kind of smile that fathers produce when their sons say something that is exactly right and exactly dangerous at the same time. Colton started that evening. The rumen magnet went down first. A smooth, cylindrical magnet the size of a finger, delivered orally with a balling gun. The magnet settles in the reticulum and attracts any metal objects in the stomach, pinning them against the magnet and preventing further migration. $8, the most cost-effective treatment in bovine medicine. The antibiotics followed. Oxytetracycline, injected intramuscularly at the dosage rate Harlan had taught Colton when Colton was 15 and treated his first sick calf. Not the newest drug, not the most targeted. The workhorse antibiotic that has been saving cattle from bacterial infection since the 1950s. $40 for a 5-day course. Then, the nursing. This was the part that no spreadsheet measured and no manager authorized. Colton moved a cot into the barn. He slept 20 feet from the sick pen. Set his phone alarm for every 3 hours. At each alarm, he checked Sovereign's breathing rate, temperature, hydration status, and appetite. He offered water from a bucket held at muzzle height because the bull was too weak to lower his head to the trough. He hand-fed hay, small amounts, fresh, placed directly in front of the bull's mouth so that eating required the minimum possible effort. Day 1. Breathing rate 44, temperature 104.2, no appetite. Sovereign lay on his side and didn't lift his head when Colton entered the pen. Day 2. Breathing rate 40, temperature 103.8. Sovereign drank water from the bucket, 2 swallows. His eyes tracked Colton, the first sign that his brain was still processing the world instead of retreating from it. Day 3. Breathing rate 36, temperature 103.1. He ate a handful of hay, not much. Enough to tell Colton that his rumen was still functional and the magnet was doing its job. Day 4 was the crisis. At 2 a.m., Colton's alarm went off. He walked to the pen. Sovereign was standing, which was new. He'd been lying down for 3 days. But he was standing rigid. His neck was extended. His breathing was fast and irregular. His abdomen was distended on the left side. Bloat, secondary to the hardware disease. The infection had disrupted rumen motility, and gas was building faster than the bull could expel it. Colton knew what to do, because Harlan had shown him when he was 16. He grabbed a stomach tube from the barn pharmacy, a 6-foot flexible tube designed to pass through the esophagus into the rumen. He lubricated the end, stood beside Sovereign's head, talked to him in the low, steady tone that Harlan used, and Harlan's father had used before him. Easy, big man. Easy. I'm going to help you, just stand still for me. He passed the tube. The bull stood rigid, but didn't fight. The tube reached the rumen, and a rush of gas escaped through the open end with a sound like a tire deflating. The pressure in Sovereign's abdomen released. His breathing slowed immediately. His neck relaxed. His eyes, which had been wide with the panic of an animal that can't breathe properly, softened. Colton stood in the barn at 2:15 in the morning, holding a stomach tube and a sick bull that a billionaire in New York had written off and a ranch manager had scheduled for disposal. 22 years old, $19 an hour, $48 in supplies, and the knowledge that his father had been putting into his hands since he was old enough to hold a halter. Day 5. The antibiotics were working. Temperature 101.8, normal range. Breathing rate 28. Sovereign ate a full flake of hay and drank from the trough on his own for the first time. Day 7. Sovereign stood up when Colton entered the pen, not because he was startled, because he recognized the footsteps. Day 10. He was eating normally. His eyes were clear. The abdominal rigidity was gone. Vivian Torres came for a follow-up. Colton had called her on day 4 during the bloat crisis, and she'd talked him through the tubing over the phone without charging for the call, because some vets understand that the billing department and the Hippocratic Oath don't always align. Vivian examined Sovereign carefully. Listened to the heart. Listened to the rumen. Palpated the abdomen. The magnet is holding, she said. I can feel it in the reticulum. The wire appears to have stopped migrating. The infection is resolving. His vitals are normal. She looked at Colton. You did this with oxytetracycline and a rumen magnet, and a stomach tube at 2 a.m. on day 4. Vivian shook her head. Not disapproval. Something closer to the expression a teacher makes when a student solves a problem using a method the teacher didn't teach but can't argue with. The protocol I recommended to Kyle, the $12,000 version, would have included IV fluids, targeted antibiotics, anti-inflammatories, rumen stimulants, and possibly surgery. You used a 40-year-old drug, an $8 magnet, and a cot in the barn. And it worked. Vivian looked at the bull. Gaining weight already. Alert. Eating. The animal that Kyle had told her to write off 2 weeks ago was standing in the pen looking like a bull that intended to be alive for a long time. It worked because you were here, she said. Not the drugs. The nursing. You checked him every 3 hours. You caught the bloat before it killed him. You hand-fed him when he wouldn't eat on his own. The drugs fought the infection. You kept him alive long enough for the drugs to work. That's the part that costs $12,000 when a vet does it. And you did it for free. Colton looked at Sovereign. The bull was watching him from across the pen with the expression of an animal that has learned which human shows up at 2 a.m. and which humans don't. I didn't do it for free. I did it for him. There's a difference. Kyle found out on day 12. Not because Colton told him, because Kyle walked into the barn and found a healthy bull in a pen that was supposed to contain a dying one. The conversation was short. Did you treat this bull? Yes, sir. I told your father the decision was final. You told my father. You didn't tell me. And even if you had, I'd have done it anyway. Kyle looked at Colton, the look of a manager confronting an employee who disobeyed an order and produced a result that the order would have prevented. This could cost your father his job. Colton met his eyes. My father has been keeping this ranch running for 36 years, through 3 owners who came and went. He knows every fence post, every water source, every calving difficulty on 11,000 acres. Firing him because his son saved a bull that the owner was too cheap to treat would be the most expensive decision this operation has ever made. And you know it. Kyle didn't respond. He walked back to the office, called Graham in New York. The conversation between Kyle and Graham is something Colton never heard directly, but the result arrived 2 days later in the form of a phone call from Graham to Harlan. Harlan, I understand your son treated Sovereign. Yes, sir. He did. How much did it cost? $48, plus his time. Graham was quiet. The quiet of a man who pays $1,200 for a dinner in Manhattan, processing the information that a 22-year-old in Wyoming saved a $110,000 bull for $48 and a cot in the barn. Is the bull going to make it? Dr. Torres says he's recovering. The magnet stopped the wire. The infection is clearing. He should be back to breeding condition by spring. Another pause. Your son, he works for us? He's a ranch hand. $19 an hour. Raise him to 28. And tell him... Graham paused. Tell him I was wrong. The bull was worth treating. And the person who knew that wasn't in my office. He was in my barn. Harlan delivered the message to Colton that evening, sitting at the same kitchen table where the decision had been made 2 weeks earlier. Colton listened, nodded, didn't celebrate the raise, didn't gloat about Graham's admission. He said one thing. The bull was never about the money, Dad. Not Graham's money, not the vet bill, not my raise. It was about whether we're the kind of people who let something die because somebody with a spreadsheet says it's not worth saving. He looked at his father. You taught me we're not those people. Everything I did in that barn, I learned from watching you. The tube, the antibiotics, the way you talk to a sick animal at 2 a.m. That's not in any manual. That's 36 years of you showing me what it looks like when someone gives a damn. Harlan didn't say anything. He reached across the table and put his hand on his son's arm. The gesture that fathers make when words would only diminish what was just said. Sovereign bred 40 cows the following spring. 92% conception. His calves were the heaviest calf crop the ranch had produced in 3 years. The bull that Graham wrote off for $12,000 in vet bills generated approximately $68,000 in calf revenue his first season back. Graham visited the ranch in July, 4th time in 3 years. He walked to the pasture where Sovereign was grazing with the herd, stood at the fence for a while. Colton was nearby, checking water tanks. Graham looked at him. You're the one who saved him. Yes, sir. Why? Colton looked at the bull, then at Graham, because nobody else was going to. Graham nodded. The nod of a man who understands leverage and margins and restructuring, but is standing in front of something that doesn't fit in any of those frameworks. A 22-year-old kid who makes $19 an hour, 28 now, who slept on a cot for 2 weeks to save an animal that the owner considered a write-off. Some things don't show up on a P&L, Graham said. Colton almost smiled. No, sir. Some things just show up at 2 a.m. when nobody's watching. Sovereign is 7 now. Sound, healthy. The magnet is still in his reticulum. It will stay there for life, holding the wire that almost killed him pinned harmlessly against the stomach wall. His calves have topped the ranch's sale average 2 years running. Colton is 24. Still lives in the foreman's house with Harlan. Still feeds cattle twice a day. Still earns less in a year than Graham spends on dinner in a month. But every morning when he walks to the barn, Sovereign is at the fence, waiting, not for feed. Colton doesn't feed him anymore. The bull is on pasture now. He's at the fence because some animals remember who showed up when nobody else would. And some men, regardless of what they earn or what they own or where they sit on the organizational chart of a ranch they'll never build, are worth more than the number on their paycheck. Because the paycheck measures the hours. It doesn't measure the 2 a.m. And the 2 a.m. is where everything that matters happens.